So as you can see, the EU has a much more robust system around this already, not surprisingly. But one of our pioneers lives just to the south of some of us here in Portland, Oregon. Lauren Gross of Repair PDX was brave enough to have a go at piloting a domestic voucher program. And I'll let Lauren, let me spotlight you first. Or pin you? I don't know.
I can't. Hold on. Sorry, I've got a dog that's immediately trying to play with me with a squeaky toy, so hopefully that won't be too distracting. Yeah, hi y'all. Thank you very much for inviting me and for allowing me to share a little bit about our project. Also wanted to say hi to Jim Carlisle, who is on the call also, who's been a super volunteer for us, along with other places in the region for a really long time, and has been pretty instrumental in helping us with our programming. He drives a long way in the dark and the rain to come repair items for us. And also has been really helpful in developing programming too. So I can just share a little bit about the voucher program, and feel free to put in any questions in the chat that come up, and I'm happy to answer them in real time. I didn't really make a presentation. I thought I would just kind of share a little bit just about the program. So Oregon Department of Environmental Quality has a materials management grant, and they paused it for now, but they're starting it back up again in 2022. And we applied to do a voucher program in Portland, and that was basically, there's 3 goals with that program. One was to reduce the barriers for getting items repaired. The second was to support repair businesses. And the third was just to elevate repair in Portland in general. And so it was tricky to do a program when you haven't done it before and tell the government that you're doing a program when they want something very linear, or not necessarily linear, but something very outlined. But as we saw from some of the earlier discussions, it's much better to create a program with people than for people. And so I had to let DEQ know, the Oregon DEQ, that those 3 goals, but that we were also still doing a pilot in terms of connecting with the businesses. Well, first actually doing a survey to see which businesses would be interested. And then I also hired a local organization to do some market research for us to find out where certain populations that we wanted to target lived in Portland, and also where repair was in Portland. And they did that for 2020 and then 2025 too. So also this was during the pandemic, by the way, so added a different element of challenge to it. So I had a few volunteers call different repair businesses to see if they were interested. And a few of us, and I got some really good feedback about it. So some folks were interested in it. Some folks were very busy and felt like having a voucher would be more cumbersome than it was worth. And so ultimately I picked 2 businesses to pilot. One was a LGBTQIA shoe repair shop, JD Shoe Repair in Portland. And the other one was Hidden Opulence, which is a African-American woman who owns a sewing and mending shop in Portland. And so the basics of the project were that we determined that the price of the voucher would be $40. And that was, I started first with JD Shoe Repair, and then I switched to Hidden Opulence, and then we did both simultaneously, but just to test out the ideas of the voucher. was with JD Shoe Repair, and the general cost of a shoe repair is about $100. So we determined $40 would be a good place to start. And initially I did an electronic voucher and a print voucher. And what I found was having a print voucher at the store instead of us distributing it was the best way to go, because then the store could determine who they wanted to give the vouchers to. And I mean, in terms of meeting the goal of spreading repair culture in Portland, having an electronic voucher was important for us, because then it got people, more people became aware of the vouchers and more people became aware of the businesses. But in terms of ease of the business, and building community, which is really what it was about also, is helping the stores build community. Having a voucher at the store was really effective. So I'll stop there for a second. Okay, let's see here. Was there any quantitative goal or just as a pilot? It started out as a pilot. So the whole grant was $20,000. I had budgeted 10,000 for the vouchers, but I really had to switch it up because it wasn't as many vouchers as I had thought. I thought that everybody would just be gung-ho and everybody would want it right away, but that wasn't the case. And then I didn't value my time as much as I should have in terms of like project management. So I had to amend the budget to do more personal time and less voucher time, less amount of vouchers. But I think we ended up giving out like 500 vouchers, if I remember right. Or no, it was less than that. Sorry, I would have to go back and look at. I should have confirmed the numbers before I came into this. But there was no initial quantitative goal other than the budget that I had selected. Let's see.
And Lauren, that was over the course of basically 2 years that you ran the pilot?
Yeah. It was supposed to be a year because I applied for it in 2019, but then got the budget. Let's see, we started it late 2019 and then it went through the pandemic. So yeah, I think it ended up being 2 years ultimately.
And what did you find? Okay, you said it would be ideal to design this with community initially. You may have already said this, but how did you land on shoe repair and clothing repair specifically?
Because I wanted to support those communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I had previously worked with Julie from JD Shoe Repair in the past. And I really, there was one of the impetuses was that a lot of shoe repair businesses were going out of business because they're hit really hard by the pandemic. And so it really was an opportunity to help support those businesses and keep them alive. I don't think, like, looking back on it, I don't know how. I think we helped, but I don't think it was like any kind of savior kind of thing. I think it was just a way to help contribute.
And if you were to expand on the program a second time around, what would you do? The same categories? What would you change about the program going the second time?
If I had to change, I think it would just expand it, because I think it did work really well. I think in terms of working together with the businesses, you really have to work with their systems. You can't develop your own system and implement it. You really have to work with how they do, because both Drea and Julie had different invoicing, and they had different ways of operating. Like Drea, with Hidden Opulence, got the item and then kind of gave it a estimate of what it might cost. But then once the mending was done or the sewing was done, then she would invoice the person, whereas Julie would get half up front and then half after, and generally know what kind of work needed to be done and how much it was going to cost. And then the way that Drea had people drop items off and then work on them. And Julie had like a full shop space where people could come into the shop, whereas Drea just had a studio where she would get it. So I guess the point is, I would expand it to more types of repairs. So like small engine repair, lamp repair. I would very much still do mending, very much still do shoe repair. Also, well, I was going to say appliance repair. If possible, there aren't really any small appliance shops, but that is a very big gap that's missing. People, as we have our small appliance repair project going on right now, and there's so many items that get thrown away or recycled because people just buy new stuff. Some of it's already working, or some of it just needs like a fuse, or it needs a part, just a little part, and it'll get fixed. So if I would love to have some kind of incentive for small appliance repair, because it is a huge source of waste that's not being addressed.
And do you feel like you have shops that could accommodate that? Because I'll say a little bit. Following Lauren's model, we here in Washington wanted to do a pilot. So we did a larger number of categories in a smaller, less populated geographic area, but tried to spread across more categories, but finding small appliance repair was very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be the case, decades ago, you used to be able to take appliances into a shop, but the tricky part about that is that it was tied to something else. So like Radio Shack, for example, you could take something in to get repaired. I don't know if you could do it specifically at that store, but stores like that where you could, they had like a retail aspect to it, and then they also had a repair aspect to it. Or you could take your TV in and up to a place that also sold TVs, kind of thing. But it's so tricky nowadays because a lot of folks are selling things online. And so a repair shop in and on of itself might not be a sustainable model. I think it would be more sustainable if it was tied together with something else. In Portland, there's a lot of large appliance places. So potentially we could partner, or we could, get something going where it's large appliance and small appliance repair, but they are very different categories. So I think there's a lot to be explored there.
Agreed. One thing that I really loved about what Christina was speaking about, I can't remember if it was France now, but being able to use the voucher at repair events. I think that's brilliant. I can't quite imagine the bureaucracy that would go into facilitating that, but I think that would be really nice. A lot of small repair groups are already floating the costs of spare parts. Of course, we'll ask if you know that you need a spare part, try to bring it, but it just doesn't always happen. But if some of those funds could go directly to the repair groups, that would solve some other problems that they're already struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as far as outreach to get people aware of the voucher program, what mechanisms did you use for that?
I hired an intern to help me with social media. And I also, we have a pretty strong following on our newsletter. So a lot of it was just building interest, letting folks know that we're doing it. And then through the businesses themselves was really a good way to do that. And then through different community organizations that we have connections to, just a lot of networking and letting folks know who we're trying to target. that this was an option that was available. So I can't say strongly enough how important it is to build partnerships and collaborate, because that's how you build awareness and reach people that you're wanting to reach.
And I'll just echo some of what Lauren already shared. Working with the businesses was, I found far more labor was necessary to find a system that would work with them and with their whatever their system was. So designing it from the outset and then talking with them, like, what's your intake process? What's your invoicing process? Is this going to work for you? We had to make a lot of changes because we've made assumptions about how this would go. And I think there's just a lot of hand holding because it's a new concept. There are like digital coupons, people do that, but for a lot of the businesses that we worked with, they were like 1 or 2 person shops. They don't have marketing materials. They don't have a department to handle IT stuff, similar to many nonprofits. So it was really just like walking through a process, giving them materials, time to think about it, and ask lots of questions. So a lot of follow up. But I think if and as Christina said in one of the German iterations, it's a very large administrative burden. But I forgot, Lauren, how did you work with actually getting the vouchers?
Well, and just to add on to that, additionally, because it was a Oregon Department of Environmental Quality grant, we also had to track demographics. And so, it was a question of like when to capture that information. Do you capture it when folks apply for the voucher, because we had folks initially apply and then I would distribute them? Or do you do it at the point of sale? Because sometimes people get the voucher, but they don't always use it. So we tried it a bunch of different ways. And at shops, they're business. So you have to, they're not going to just jump on their computer and enter stuff into a Google form, so we had to really simplify the process, and we ended up actually printing out a form that folks would just fill out by hand, and then I would have my intern enter the data into the Google form after the repair had been done, because that way we could attach the repair to the demographic information. But even that was tricky because I had to drive there and pick up the forms and then bring it back, and it wasn't the most efficient process. But yeah, if we kept going, we would make it more efficient.
We have another question. Let's see. This Hedgie, if you're in this session, I'm not even sure if this is for a general group, but it seems like the deficit of actual repairs is so crucial. Yes. Maybe there needs to be a mentorship component to teach the repair skills to the next generation. That theme just threads through everything that we're talking about today and tomorrow and ongoing conversations. Lauren, this may not have been something so apparent with just working with 2 established shops, but several of the business owners I spoke to, they're planning to close shop. They're going to retire and they don't have a succession plan in place. So we are working with a very, very fragile system of repair shops as it is. Many of them have high demand. That was one of our learnings, that they were already overwhelmed with the number of repairs. It wasn't necessarily what we had thought. We're like, oh, we're going to drive business to them. They're like, we don't have capacity right now. We need more apprentices. We need more people learning these trades. Otherwise, in 5 years, I'm gonna go live my best retired life. And these skills aren't necessarily being transferred to new hands. So gotta work on that. If anyone is interested in that specific topic, we will be over the next year. I will be trying to convene some discussions around workforce development and repair skill transferal. So please reach out to me if you would like, if you have insights or would like to be part of those conversations, because it's looming and we need to get, I won't say we're out in front of it because we're already behind, but at least need to tackle it at some point.